Thank you very much, Chairman. And hello everybody. I don't know how I'm going to follow that. That's all I have to say. I just want to say how much I admire all of the speakers that I've had the pleasure of listening to over the last couple of days. And in thinking about what I would say to you myself, I had to come to the conclusion that Ireland is in a pretty crazy place. And I wouldn't want any country to be imitating what Ireland has done over the last few years. But I am here also to tell you that there are people in Ireland who are working for a better day. And some of them are in the National Parliament, and many, many more of them are in our society and in our community. But I thought I might start, even though it is a little bit depressing, but this being the graveyard shift, I thought I would show you a short video. And before I do, I just want to give you the context. Sadly, in 2018, the Irish people voted to remove the constitutional protection for the unborn child, the wonderful 8th Amendment that the same people, well, different people in a previous generation had inserted into the Irish Constitution in 1983. And as a result of that, we now have a very permissive abortion law. But not only that, we have an establishment that is absolutely ruthless about not tolerating or being in any way open to a discussion about abortion, or to a discussion about the need to reduce abortions, or anything that would suggest that abortion is a regrettable thing. So it's possible to say that Ireland has gone from one extreme to another in a generation, from a period in our national life where there was large-scale conformity with Catholic identity and with the values that you would associate with Catholic identity, to a new unthinking woke liberalism that has really gripped the majority, I suppose, of our community, not least due to a certain hegemony of liberal media. And as a result, the Church institutionally is now very weak, and it's difficult to even get the alternative point of view heard. And you'll be sad to hear, for example, that in a country where so much health care, among other services, was provided for so long by the Church at a time when the state was unable or unwilling to do so, we now have a situation where there is no maternity hospital in Ireland that can be said to be guided by the Catholic ethos that people of faith, and indeed people of no faith or different faith, would rely on in order to uphold the dignity of all persons. And recently we've had a crazy debate in Ireland about our new national maternity hospital. And this is going to be located on grounds owned by the Sisters of Charity. But they have effectively lost control over their established hospital on that premises, have given over their shares to a charity, and we are looking at a future where the National Maternity Hospital will provide abortions in accordance with law and a whole lot of other services that would conflict with a Christian ethos. And they will do that in an institution that will still carry the name of St. Vincent. That's how topsy-turvy things have become in Ireland. And not only that, but despite the fact that the government has got everything that it wants, it will get its abortion. We have still had this massive fake news scare in Irish media in recent times and in Irish political discourse, claiming that the mechanism used to transfer the hospital to the state still allows the religious some possibility to influence the ethos of the hospital, which sadly is not true. They have handed over a 299-year lease on the property. It will be controlled by the state. But I think you see the devil at work there. Not only do they get abortion, but they get to continue the scare and to allege that there should be a scare about Catholic influence on health care. Not only is it not there, but we don't even get a chance to say, hang on a minute, it has been the Catholic influence that promoted care that looked out for everybody. But recently in our Parliament, one member spoke out against that, and I'm not sure you will understand what he has to say not because you might not speak English, but because he has a particular rural style. He is a highly intelligent and very colourful politician who decided to speak out against the hypocrisy in this debate about the National Maternity Hospital. And here is what he said. I hope we have sound here.
Count Caller, thank you. Count Caller, Ministers, first of all, I'd like to say something, and if there are nuns listening, I'd like to say something that they didn't hear coming out of this chamber yet, until perhaps right now. Thank you very much.
Hear, hear.
Because nobody has yet said thank you. I don't think in government or out of government or in opposition. All everybody has done was try to pick fault, find everything they could possibly wrong with it, all because of this anti-religion agenda that is going on in Ireland at present. And I think it's absolutely outrageous. I was talking to an extremely intelligent person the other evening, and he was watching this whole debate going on with the last couple of weeks. He was listening to all the different political commentary, and of course he said about the hatred that seemed to be seeping out of certain politicians' mouths when they were speaking about the Sisters of Charity. And this was his comment, and it was along the lines of, why did the sisters do it this way and why not that way? Quite simply, because they own the land and they wanted to do it this way. And I think it's extremely fair. 300 years at €10 a year. What part of that does not anybody understand? That is, in effect, gifting it to the state. And if this is the way they wanted to do it, and if this was the rules they were laying down, isn't that fine and well and good? And why can't people accept that? But the reason they can't is because people want to forget and ignore the good work that was done by the Catholic Church in Ireland. And of course bad things happened, and of course there was bad people, there was bad priests, and there was bad everybody, but there was bad everybody in every walk of life. But think about the extremely kind and good people, young boys and young girls who devoted and gave up their lives for what they believe in, and that was God. But of course there's an awful lot of politicians here. They can't believe in God because they think they're God themselves.
So I'm not going to ask you to take an examination. I'm not going to ask you to take an examination on what Michael Healy-Rae said, but he's a very famous figure in Ireland. Essentially, he said thanks to the nuns, because nobody had said thanks so far because of what he described as an anti-religious agenda seeping out of so many places in politics and indeed in the media. He said that people wanted to forget all the good work that the church had done for so long, acknowledging that there were sins and failings, but saying that these were in every walk of life. And finally, he said that so many of these politicians don't want to acknowledge God because they think they're God themselves. And, you know, that's possibly true of a lot of politicians, but it's probably also true of the philosophy of our time, where humankind has made itself its own measure. The Deus Homo idea. So even though he's speaking in very rhetorical terms, he is actually getting to a core truth. Now, what we're seeing in Ireland, sadly, as I've said, is a new hypocrisy, therefore, and irrationality. And against this background, many of us wonder what can be done. Because we had an Ireland where faith and loyalty to the church was the social norm. Now it's the other extreme. It's a country where even among occasional mass-goers, there's a hermeneutic of suspicion. It's a country where even mass-going older Catholics defer to the secular values of their confident, sometimes more formally educated children. But I'm actually not here to moan about the challenges facing Ireland, because I remember what Gudrun had to say yesterday, which is that we are privileged to live in this time. We are privileged to have the work that we have to do. And we remember that evil is limited by the good that we can do. We have a high calling, and therefore we must serve. But how do we serve? And I realize in asking this question that we are all in different situations. So I'm just going to offer some principles, and I won't take long, under 3 headings. First of all, I suppose to understand, let me just get my notes up here so that I'm not taking too long to say it, okay? And I'll only be a second. There we go, I have it, you'll be glad to hear. Okay. The first thing is to reflect a bit on our problems, but I've already done that. A media hegemony, the socialization of journalists. We don't have a Fox News, and you can criticize Fox News in America, but at least it's a corrective to the subtle biases on the other side. And I think that promotes a lively debate, even if we can worry sometimes about the tone of the debate in American media on both sides. But we do have a hegemonic media in Ireland which doesn't allow alternative points of view. We need to reflect on our own sins as well. Our past problems have given the stick with which the media and others can beat the defenders of the values that are important for protecting human dignity. And we have to reckon with the fact that human nature is human nature, and sometimes the devil appears to have the good tunes, because individualism and the lifestyle associated with individualism is, in the short term, tempting to people, even if in the long term it will disappoint. So that's the first issue, reflecting on the problems. The second, dealing with our temptations. The temptation to fatalism. The idea that the world is going to hell but God's in charge in the end. Well, it's true, but it mustn't lead us to be fatalistic or passive in the face of the problems that are there. We also need to beware of a false humility about presenting our ideas. You know the biblical, the scriptural line, the meek shall inherit the earth. There's a version of that that says, the meek shall inherit the earth, if that's okay with you. We mustn't be too meek. We must be out there promoting our values with confidence and seeking every opportunity. And I would say the other temptation I would recommend that we avoid is that of wounded pride. There is a wound to our pride when we consider the faith and the reason and the intellectual credibility and the social relevance of the ideas we believe in about human dignity, and to see them being trashed by inferior arguments in populist debates is frankly wounding to one's pride. To be excluded from debates where the ideas that dominate are so manifestly inferior is an offense to pride, but the temptation in our wounded pride might be to withdraw and sulk, where in fact we have to seek the opportunities to engage. And that finally leads me to the solutions that I propose. And of course they're going to be very general because they are going to be case and country specific. In my political career, what I seek to do is to build my own base as well as I can by reaching out to every possible voter on every possible potential ground of agreement. Even if they don't share my ideas about the pro-life cause, they might share my interest in the Irish language or whatever it is. To seek friendships, because in the end, just as in fundraising, people don't give to causes, they give to people. In the same way, through friendships and the building of understanding, we can find opportunities to bring others to an understanding of our ideas, fellow politicians and people in our community. I like to talk a lot about the Camino de Santiago de Compostela, because I think it's a beautiful thing that brings people together. People of different levels and commitments of faith find themselves sharing a journey together. We need to make our daily life a kind of Camino de Santiago, where we encounter people and seek understanding with them. And sometimes it involves doing crazy things. In the National Parliament at home every year, I sell some small knitted chickens, okay? Some of the ladies in my parish knit little chickens. And they do so, and they put a chocolate egg inside of the knitted chicken. And they do so in order to raise money for missionaries from our diocese doing good work abroad. And I go around the Parliament and I sell these knitted chickens to people of all points of view. And of course, at the beginning, it's quite humiliating because you're trying to sell something. But sooner or later, everybody comes in on the joke and they realize that I am making myself vulnerable in order to make a connection with them and, of course, in order to get some money from their missionary priests. And I enjoy telling my colleagues who are not pro-life that these chickens are some kind of obstetrical miracle because they contain a chocolate egg. And this is a small and crazy way, just through humour and engagement, I seek to break down a prejudice. I also take an interest in alternative projects. What I mean by that is projects that don't just involve legislation and the hard work of changing policy and law. We have a life and dignity group in the Parliament, and one of the things I started a few years ago is the Human Dignity Award, where we give an award and we have a fundraising celebratory dinner to some person who by their life in a particular way has witness to life across the spectrum. Now, the people who have got it are not known to be pro-lifers per se, but they will not get the award if they are in favour of capital punishment, and they will not get the award if they don't protect human life or wish to protect human life from its very beginnings. And in this way, I am trying to educate slowly that there is such a thing as human dignity, and it is important to be consistent when we stand up for human dignity. I'm also due to start a national essay competition which will reach out to schools, not necessarily on bioethical issues, but around the ideas that politics matters and that we need good politics and ethical politics if we are going to have a healthy society. And then finally, on legislation, building alliances where possible. And we heard wonderful stuff yesterday, particularly from Dawn, I must say, about the good work that we can all get involved in trying to combat the abuse of children through pornography, human trafficking, and all the related issues. I think that many people will understand us on issues, for example, related to transgender, when we say that we must have compassion to every person, including people with gender identity issues, but we must respect the ecology of the person, and we must protect people against danger, and we must protect children in particular from life-saving medical and surgical interventions that might damage their lives. I believe we can build alliances there. You see it happening with the feminist movement and so on, and people like J.K. Rowling who have spoken up. There is real progress to be made there. I mentioned tackling sexual exploitation of children and focusing on big tech. We have already criminalised sex buyers in Ireland, and that work did involve a certain amount of cooperation between people of faith and people in the feminist movement. We have an issue coming down the tracks in Ireland, sadly. Euthanasia is being proposed. However, unlike the abortion debate, and this may surprise you, most of the medical establishment in Ireland is opposed to euthanasia, and many of the medical organisations submitted documents warning about the dangers of the proposed legislation. So here again is an area where we will hopefully be able to build consensus, and we will find allies on this road that we would not necessarily have on other roads. Lola mentioned the legislation that was brought forward on precautionary pain relief in the context of abortion. It's not a finished story. It did not get support. The government found ways to distract. However, this legislation did capture the imagination of some politicians in our Parliament who are not normally pro-life, because they recognised the strange and cruel irony that we in Ireland have legislation that requires pain relief for animals on whom surgeries are being performed, and rightly so. I support animal welfare, but where abortions are taking place in late term, there are not many, but there are some, there is not a legal requirement to have precautionary pain relief. And that is an obscenity on top of the obscenity, of course, that is there in abortion law itself. Those are some of the examples. I could go on, but I have already gone on too long. And for that, I apologise to you and to the chair. Thank you very much.